Hello, everybody. Wow. So get your pens and paper out. If you wanted to learn about the gut microbiome and you wanted to understand leaky gut, today is your day. We have Dr. Alvin Danenberg returning to our not meds, naturally oriented therapists, medically enlightened doctors and specialists, the podcast, The Beats, where its platform is Not Meds and so many other platforms that you're listening to this. But our goal is to bring you the extreme, detail-oriented, and scientific minds, the wisdom of what we have the capacity to understand about how this amazing body really works and how to optimize it and how to create a robust immune system. And that exact conversation is what Dr. Alvin Danenberg is talking about today. You have heard of Dr. Alvin Danenberg, I'm sure, if you're involved in this industry or if you've listened to my previous podcast. He has literally saved his own life with technologies, turning on his own body's immune system. This man was in hospice in September of 19. It is now June of 21, and he had walked away from hospice and is now dispensing all his information for all of us. And he listens to my podcast pretty diligently, and I really appreciate Al for doing that and takes notes and has things to say about what I missed or what I didn't include or what I needed to highlight more. I love him so much for being that insistent with me. And so I asked him to come back today to talk more about the gut microbiome, because as he mentioned, there's so many ways that we destroy it and so many ways that we can build it up, and such a misunderstanding of it that we wanted to do a deep dive. And that's what today is about. So make sure you hit the subscription button, make sure you hit that notification button so you never meet the beats. From our heart to yours, I really know that this is going to hit you where it feels good, is in the gut, to know that you're on the right track. Keep closing those gaps. You're doing a great job. You got this. And thank you so much for joining us today on The Beats with my great colleague, friend, and mentor, Dr. Alvin Danenberg. Welcome back to The Beats with Kelly Kennedy. And we have a repeat guest. Dr. Alvin Danenberg has offered to join us again. And I really have to say that you guys know how much I love him. He's such a deep diver into the science. He calls himself controversial, but I would like to say he's just getting people to be conscious and aware and think about things maybe at a deeper level. And you know, we have such a premise on The Beats of people understanding, naturally oriented therapists, medically enlightened doctors and specialists, how the body actually works. And as Al keeps listening to my podcast, he calls me and says, but you're not talking enough about the gut microbiome. And I said, I agree. Let's have a podcast about it, because you cannot heal the body without that. So if you don't know Dr. Alvin Danenberg's story, you need to know Dr. Alvin Danenberg's story. He is gifting this world the last few years of his life. He's 74 years old now. And if it was not for his persistence, his due diligence, his wisdom, and his ability of his incredible body to heal, we would not be gifted with his time today. And we are so thankful that he figured all that out and continues to educate the world. Thank you so much for joining us again, Al.
Well, I mean, I couldn't have paid you to say more beautiful things. Thank you. Yes. And it's a pleasure. I love this. I love working with you because you're such an expressive interviewer. You have emotion, you ask the right questions. It's a joy. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, thank you. And for those that are watching, I have a little dark shadow here. My light just won't stay on. So there you go. That's what this is the authenticity of with this program.
Yes.
So first of all, he looks great. If you're not looking at him, you should come watch the video. He looks great. And we're going to talk about so many things today, but let's dive into the gut microbiome. Then we'll talk about EMF and radiation while we talk about that, because sure. As a trained periodontist, one of the things that we started talking about is that in some previous podcasts, we've talked a lot about the dental piece, the root canals, the dental fillings, and all of that. And while that's key and important, the trained periodontist would like to say something else.
Sure. Do you want me to speak now?
Please do.
The preliminary statement I must make is I sometimes have diarrhea of the mouth, so stop me when you need to stop me or redirect me.
I will.
Yes. So there are so many causes to so many chronic problems today in the world. Oh my God. And I will tell you, not to be, obviously, I'm not very humble when I make this statement, is I think I have the answer, where I have so much of the answer, we can build on that. We are living in a polluted sea, basically. We have junk around us. We are being fed improper food. We are living an unhealthy lifestyle. We're exposed to unhealthy chemicals in a variety of ways, and it's damaging to every cell in our body, but it is tremendously damaging to our gut microbiome. We have 38 trillion microbes in our gut and the rest of our body. We only have 30 trillion human cells. Just figure that one out. We are more microbial than human. But if you were to destroy this microbiome, this garden of interactive and balanced bacteria, you would die. If you took a tablet of penicillin, assuming you're not allergic to penicillin, because you thought you needed to take one tablet of penicillin a day to kill all those terrible bugs in your body, you will kill them and kill yourself. Your body is dependent on these microbes. It's the way we have evolved. Don't try to change Mother Nature. This is the way it is. So these microbes that live in your gut have many, many, many purposes. They produce all kinds of vitamins and all kinds of metabolites called biologically active chemicals. They feed the gut mucus layer. They repair the gut microbiome, the gut epithelial barrier. They prevent chronic systemic inflammation. They talk to your immune system and tell your immune system where to go where there is an infection in the body. There's, like I said, 38 trillion human cells, much, 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 much less immune cells. So it's like the watchdog.
38 trillion microbes, 3 trillion human cells.
30 trillion human.
30 trillion, okay.
Yeah. So 38 trillion human microbes and 30 trillion human cells, approximately.
Really more microbes, but the point is that if all the microbes were to die, humans would cease to exist, but the planet would still be here. It'd be a little different planet, but the planet would still be here. The trees might still be here. But humans would cease to survive if we killed all the microbiome in our body. Just kill all the bacteria, we kill all the viruses, we kill all the fungus in our bodies. We no longer survive. This is a key premise for people to understand, because there's
these microbes,
antibacterial soaps and.
Well, you can test this for yourself. Use an alcohol antimicrobial spray 5, 6, 10, 20 times a day, which we are encouraged to do, right? With COVID and whatever. No. The CDC encourages us to do that, from what I gather.
Yeah.
And then see what happens to your hands. See what happens to the inflammation in your hands, the redness, the cracks, the soreness. And it's the result of you're killing all these microbes on your hand that are critical for this tissue to stay moist and healthy and absorbent to what it needs to absorb, and expressive to get rid of certain toxins through the epithelial layers. These elements are related. The process and pathways of a healthy body are related to the health of these microbes. If you kill them,
we're not sterile. I think that's the people wash their hands because they want to be sterile. And I think what you just said was, hey, listen, we have bacteria living on our skin. And I think for a lot of people that breaks their circuits in their brains. Like, I know that as a biologist, but there's a lot of people that are not aware that there's good bacteria. There's no good or bad. There's an environment of of bacteria that is on our skin that if you
and they're in balance, they work integratively, they're in balance. And what is in balance and normal for your skin may not be normal for the person next to you. And I must tell you that the gut microbiome, which is this huge, wonderful garden, they have potentially very pathogenic bacteria, very potentially pathogenic bacteria that are not pathogenic because they keep other things in balance, and they're kept in balance. And your gut microbiome is as unique to you in diversity and specificity as your fingerprint. So your microbiome is not, even if it were totally healthy for you, is not necessarily good for the next person next to you. That's why fecal microbial transplants.
Thank you. I was just thinking of that, exactly.
Which are extremely beneficial when they work, are not always beneficial, even though they look like a very healthy microbiome. When it's injected or it's supplanted in a different individual, that individual's natural microbiome may not work with that new fecal microbial transplant, and it becomes toxic or damaging or dysfunctional for that recipient. So we are unique. The important thing is to rebuild, replenish, create more diversity in our garden of bacteria that is made by our body the day we are born, and changes to some extent for a couple years, but it establishes itself by around 2.5, 3 years old, and it will stay with you in that kind of diversity to some extent through the rest of your life.
Wow, I did not know
and,
that. I'm
and it also
years old. So if I grew up in Italy versus Wisconsin, for those 2.5 years, I'm exposed to different foods and exposed to different environmental factors. I'm going to have a different microbiome. And then that's set, even if I then go live from, where I say Italy over to Wisconsin, then I move from Wisconsin to Italy. For the next 40 years, my microbiome is set for those first 2.5 years in the environment.
Basically set, but it's very adaptive. And let me tell you some interesting stories or interesting research.
Okay.
I can't remember the date of this publication, but it's within the last 3 years, I believe. So there was a study that was done with humans, not rats and mice, and humans were eating a totally plant-based diet, and their gut microbiome was examined. There were certain dominant species and dominant species in that microbiome for a plant-based eating human. When that same person switched to an animal-based diet, within 24 hours, their microbiome changed. Not completely, but they changed to different dominant species, which was normal and very adapted to that way of eating. When that animal-based diet person then switched back to a plant-based diet, the microbiome within 24 hours noted a significant change in the species again. So we have a very adaptable microbiome, but these species are relatively in our system. They just change in proportion. So these 38 trillion microbes live in different proportions at different times. And what the problem really is that of those 38 trillion, many, not most, but many, have the potential to cause serious disease. So when you damage other healthier bacteria and allow these potentially pathogenic bacteria to overgrow, then you get dysbiosis, then you have damage, then you have a dysfunctional immune system because it's being activated, creating inflammation. Then you have damage to the mucus layer. Then you have damage to the epithelial barrier, which, by the way, is only one cell layer thick. Think about that. The only thing that keeps everything in the tube of the GI tract is just one cell layer thick. But that one cell layer is a critical factor in your health because it slowly opens and closes its connections, its junction from cell to cell, to allow nutrients to literally go into your bloodstream. It can go through the individual cells themselves and also through the contact points, the tight junctions. And when they do that, this is how your body gets the nutrients into your blood system. If those contacts of the cells open too wide or for too long because of damage that's occurring in the actual epithelial barrier, nutrients that are not fully digested, which are perfectly healthy for you, can leak into the bloodstream, not in their basic element, but still what will be more a complex nutrient yet. And the immune system doesn't recognize this complexity, and it gets stimulated and creates inflammation. And when you get inflammation and it pours into the bloodstream, it can become very toxic. Even there's a name called metabolic endotoxicity, where the actual toxic elements get into the blood in large masses and spread throughout the circulatory system into all organ systems, including the mouth. And it changes the other microbiome garden of bacteria in other areas of the body. And it can cause disease.
We got to unpack that, because what you just said is a lot.
So let's start. So let's start at the beginning.
First of all, what he just described is leaky gut. And so many people know, and they've heard the term leaky gut, but we don't really know what leaky gut is. So let's back this up. For so many people, the epithelial layer. Epithelial is a skin layer. You know, you have your skin is epithelial cells. And so inside your abdomen, in your gut, there's a layer between your intestines and this tissue around it that's only one cell thick. And one cell, for those of you who have done live blood cell with me, you know how incredibly tiny, minute the cells are. I mean, we take one drop of your blood, we look at it under a microscope at 100 magnification so that we can see 20 of them in a little tiny sample. Like, think about how thin a cell is. And that's all that's preventing you from having a barrier between your gut and your bloodstream. But these junctures have to open up, because we don't just get through circulation through the cardiovascular system is one way we get nutrients. Lymphatic flow is another way we get nutrients, through the spaces. That's what he's talking about. When you have leaky gut, it gets into your lymphatic system, and it's the macronutrients versus the micronutrients, because what he's talking about is when you chew food, it's in its whole element. And as your body continues to chew the chyme and make it, is it bulbous to chyme or chyme to bulbous? I don't remember the terminology, but it's one or the other. You chew it in your mouth, it becomes chyme. And then when you get down your gut, it becomes bolus. Is that right? Or is it
well, the bolus is the chewed food, and then it breaks down the chyme, and then it continues to digest into smaller and smaller and smaller molecules until it's at its basic molecule of a nutrient.
And that's what we all want to be absorbed into the tissues and the cells of the body, that can be on a molecular level, on an ionic exchange, be transmitted, because everything turns into energy. And that's why we eat food and why we breathe air and why we drink water, is to get energy into the body, because energy is how we live. But this microbiome is adaptive, pleomorphic, if you will. I love the words you use, potentially pathology. It's a potential of pathology, as long as the environment is just so, and we're going to talk about what causes it to not be just so, one of the major influencers. Then if it's just so, then the junctions open up, the nutrients come in, the junctions close, everything's going well. But if it doesn't, then these macronutrients get into the tissue. That creates full inflammation because now the body's going, what are these huge elements? I'm looking for tiny little elements, not these big elements. It fights it. It creates debris in the lymphatics. It thickens the lymph and it slows down it increases accumulation and slows down drainage and detoxification. Where am I wrong? Tell me, what did I miss?
No, you're absolutely explaining it well. So we're having something going on in the gut that is not right, mainly the bacteria, caused by a variety of factors we'll get into. And then when the bacteria overgrow and become unhealthy, some of them, the immune system is stimulated, which is the natural body's mechanism to fight invaders of any type, externally and internally. You know, the immune system doesn't fight just viruses and bacteria that you breathe in or eat or whatever. They fight internal irritants and damaged cells like cancer cells. We have, if we want to go off on a small tangent, we have literally cancerous cells, dysfunctional cells that are not growing properly every day of our existence. Second by second, we have cancerous cells, but the body recognizes the cancerous cells. The immune system can do that and it gobbles them up. In addition, the cells are pretty smart themselves. And when they recognize they're not operating properly for some reason, there are many, many reasons, they can actually kill themselves off, called apoptosis, so that the cell doesn't metastasize and grow and infiltrate the body. Or they can use autophagy, which is another cleansing process internally where the cell does not die. It just gathers the toxic elements that are overgrowing in the cell, wards them or encloses them in some type of vesicle and destroys them or expels them from the cell, whereby the immune system can pick those up and get rid of it. So the immune system is a critical business army in our body. It's fighting everything.
And autophagy is a technology, if you will, of the body. It's a mechanism in the body that can be turned on by our actions of fasting. Oh, did you lose me?
I lost you.
Oh, I don't know where I went, but I'm right here. Do you still hear me? Can you hear me? Oh,
are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? I don't know what happened.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I just heard a click and then you stopped. I don't know what happened.
I don't know. Mercury's in retrograde, so we're just going to blame it on that and keep moving. What I said was, I don't know what I said because I got caught up with the technology.
What were you talking about? Autophagy is technology in the body.
It's a technology that can be turned on by fasting. Just like ketosis can be turned on by how we eat. That these are technologies like, you know, I myself and my husband teach a lot about inner engineering and Sadhguru's work, and through your breath, turning on your own mechanisms for creating your own chemistry, getting your own DMT to be created through your breath. And, you know, the body is amazing. It has the ability to turn these on. It's just, we've got to learn how to use the technology that we've been given in this biological, I don't like to call it a machine, but this biological organism that has programs in it that we can turn on and off, because it in itself is, I mean, I've always said that it's the whole body is the immune system because its job is to survive. And the microbiome are kind of like the engineers of the technology that are deciding, is this train going in the right direction or is it going in the wrong direction, based upon the environment that they're just doing their best job to compensate for what we're giving it. And if it's in the environment where everything's like all these exposures and toxicants and Wi-Fi's, and we'll talk about that, then it shifts the environment and allows the poor behaving bacteria that are more pathogenic in nature, allows them to morph and change into pathology. And as we change the environment, as we rehab the cells, as we regenerate, they morph back down and adapt back into non-pathogenic bacteria that are actually balancing out and creating acids and doing all the things that they need to do to create the proper flora, the proper gut health to allow our body to absorb the nutrients and get rid of everything else that we don't need.
The bottom line goal, if anybody really wanted to pick and choose, what is the most important thing to do for your body? It's the all-inclusive concept of developing a robust immune system. So that means the gut, that means the diet, that means the irritants that can cause damage to the gut. That means anything and everything that's affecting either positively or negatively the immune system has to be in play to develop not just a healthy immune system, but a robust immune system. And I use that word because it's a strong adjective, meaning that it must be at peak performance. It can't be an army of soldiers that are too tired to work. It must be a system that is efficient for your body. And that's what I've done with my cancer. And I've created a significant, robust immune system that should not be part of a person that has incurable bone marrow cancer, which I have. And I do have
3 years now.
Yeah, since September 2018.
And you walked out of hospice, because so many people do that. They walk out of hospice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was given 3 to 6 months to live in September 2018. I was in hospice, ready to die, September 2019. I returned to my unconventional cancer protocols, never have had and never will have chemotherapy. And I'm doing very well. I'm not in remission. I'm not in remission.
It's June of 2021 that we're recording this, just so that whenever anybody listens to this, they can create the time frame to give people perspective that, you know, you never gave up, and we can give your wife credit for that.
Yes.
You never, and yourself, but she called you out on that.
Absolutely.
You never
she
gave
still
up.
Does. She
and
still
God
does.
Bless her for that, because there's so much message here. You know, I think that our story needs to be screamed from the rooftops to teach people the actualization of the human potential, and that when it's treated properly, this is an incredible organism that will continue to show up for you if you continue to show up for it. But this isn't about sitting in the back seat. This isn't about being unconscious. This isn't about taking personal responsibility. This is the exact opposite. This is about being engaged and creating this robust immune system by being flexible and creating an expansive, ever-growing microbiome. You know, I was a vegetarian. I don't know if you know this. I was a vegetarian for 10 years. For 10 years, because I didn't like meat. And you and I have talked about that. I mean, I was raised in an Irish Catholic family, and if there wasn't a really burned red piece of meat on the table every night, then we weren't having dinner. And I got to the point where I was like literally gagging every single meal, and was like, at 16, I tapped out. I was like, I'm done eating meat. I can't do it anymore. I mean, I've never liked pork ever in my life. Everybody called me a reluctant carnivore my whole life. I love vegetables. When I met my husband, who's my husband now, I was after the car accident. I had been a vegetarian since 16. I was 23 when I met him. It was 3 more years that I was still a vegetarian, but he literally said to me, "You're a horribly unhealthy vegetarian." Because 1, I didn't eat a lot of vegetables. That was a problem. But 2, I was not surviving. I wasn't thriving at all. And it took him about 3 years and some other influences to convince me to start eating meat. Animal protein of any kind, actually. Well, that's not true. I ate tons of cheese and milk at the time. But the day I started eating meat, I was like, it's been 10 years. What's going to happen to my gut? And an acupuncturist was on the trip, thank God, and she helped my meridians. But literally, I started eating meat. Like, I went from none to I ate every single meal for 7 days or 10 days, meat at every single meal, because that was where I was at and what was happening. And my whole microbiome shifted so fast. I was blown away, actually. I really was, that it just shifted so fast. And now I can tell every like 3 to 4 days, if I don't have some animal protein, I start to fail. I'm not thriving as much as I need to. And so I have to like do that. But it's really, I'm still, I will call myself, or I won't want to use the word reluctant anymore, because I'm not reluctant to eat animal protein. It's not my preference, but I know it's good for my body. And when I don't have it, I see it. I see it on the scale. I see it in my face. I sleep like I'm exhausted. My brain doesn't work. I feel weaker as an organism.
Well, there is some science behind all this.
Yeah.
Dr. Mikey Bendour, who is a anthropologist in Israel, wrote a paper with 2 other contributors in March of 2021. So it's only a few months old. And he has shown in a variety of ways, biologically, physiologically, archaeologically, anthropologically, he has shown that the human species, if you believe in evolution, which I do,
Me too.
that the human species has evolved for 2.5 million years. And during that entire course of time, we have been leaning towards a carnivore diet. That's a very important statement. That goes to the basis of our DNA blueprint. Our DNA has evolved very slowly over time. And our DNA, this may be a tangent, but maybe it's not. Our DNA basically can be looked at in 2 extremes. It tells us exactly what we need to survive. It will say to us, you must breathe air or you'll die. You must drink water or you'll die. And you must eat nutrient foods or you'll die. On the other extreme, it says to us, I'm not so smart to be able to create certain enzymes that will eat up certain poisons that you might put in your body. So do not eat the poisons or you'll die, because I can't deal with it. Now, there are other DNAs and other animal systems, not human, that can deal with certain poisons in foods or chemicals, because they have that DNA structure to do that, but we don't.
Like dogs, for instance. Dogs can eat way different than a human.
Of course. And cattle. And lamb, sheep. So what I'm saying is, DNA now speaking, I'm saying don't put those poisons in your body. But what do we do as humans in civilized societies? We eat those poisons for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks every day. And the DNA is screaming and it says, this is not part of the diet that I know how to digest. Stop it, or you're going to get sicker and sicker and you're going to die. And what happens? 70% of all deaths in the United States, 70%, and this is a CDC statistic that I think is underreported, 70% of all deaths in the United States are related to a chronic disease that is never part of the human experience, ever, until recently.
Until industrialized nations and food.
Yeah, all civilized societies. And it's true, and of course, the CDC says 60% of every human being has at least one chronic disease. I don't agree with that. I think it's much higher, because periodontal disease, gum inflammation, is a chronic disease caused by the gut, by the way. Chronic disease. And there was a study done in 2010 that showed 94% of the US population has some form of gum inflammation or bleeding. It is more than pandemic proportions.
Yeah. And we talked about that at our last podcast. And if you haven't listened to that, please go back and listen to that, where we talked about plaque is not all bad, that periodontitis disease and all where that comes from in the gut. And if your gums ever bleed, it's not a good thing. And if you had blood coming out from your scalp, or you brush your hair in the morning and you had blood, you'd freak out. So why aren't you freaking out if you brush your teeth or floss your teeth and see blood? That's indicating that you have a gut epithelial issue. And by the way, the Flow-Prezo, we're working on the science behind it, but we do believe that the Flow-Prezo, we don't have science upon this, but we do believe it, and we're looking to prove it, that it actually helps the epithelial cell heal by the infrared and by the compression. But
it must be, that will maybe make it heal, but you cannot still introduce irritants, or it's never going to heal. For example,
yes,
if you're the healthiest person in the world and you have a splinter in your finger, you'll get inflammation every time, because the body needs to do that. Take the splinter out, you heal. But if you take that same splinter and poke it into the same wound once a week, it never heals, ever. Right. So you can't continue with the irritant and still try to heal the lining or the skin. What's nice about the epithelial barrier, this lining of the tube that goes from the mouth to the anus, and it's all one lining, changes as it goes all around, but it's one lining here. That lining is the most reparative tissue in the body. Those epithelial cells, one cell layer thick, are smart enough to literally replace themselves every 5 days. There's no other tissue that I know of in the body that is that reparative. That's a very strong statement. And that means that if you were absolutely unhealthy today, but you changed your entire diet and your lifestyle choices that would possibly be irritating to the gut by tomorrow, in one more week, you would have a new, unique gut lining.
Mucosa, and if you, the sinuses, the lungs, the gut, the anus, the nose, the mouth,
everything, all mucosal tissue. And what would happen is that if you didn't put any irritant, then the tissue would not be breaking down like the gut, which would be the leaky gut, and at least nothing would go into the circulatory system. Now, stuff that's floating in the circulatory system, like antibodies that were created by the immune system, may still linger for a long time, a year or two, or even longer. That's another problem. That's a unique problem, but at least you're not going to constantly irritate the epithelial barrier.
So what are these constant irritations? Like, we talk a lot about people's lifestyle choices.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Because it's very complex. Yeah. It is very complex. And some of these things we can't deal with, but many of them we can. The most obvious are the anti-nutrients in certain foods that are damaging to the gut. Like I said, the gut, your DNA blueprint says, don't put poisons in my body. So certain anti-nutrients are damaging to the gut microbiome and the epithelial barrier. They are many of the plants that have phytates, oxalates, and lectins. These are elements, chemicals that may be okay for some. Most of the people are sensitive to it, but all of them can damage and will damage the microbiome in the gut and the epithelial barrier. So that's a problem. The other thing is the processed foods. The processed foods that we eat have been changed dramatically with chemicals and preservatives and emulsifiers and synthetic food coloring and synthetic flavors, and all these chemicals are damaging to the gut microbiome. So this is an element that needs to be corrected. The water we drink, no one talks about water anymore, or if they do, they go off on a deep end that doesn't even make sense. Our primal ancestors got most of their trace minerals that the body requires from wonderful water, where the clouds rain down on the earth. The water is filtered through the dirt and the rocks, and it picks up all kinds of minerals along the way, and it gets into the aquifers and gets into the lakes and streams and whatever, and we drink this crystal clear water. I mean, it's clear, but it's not purified. It's not sterilized. It's very healthy. That's the water we should be drinking. Natural spring waters is what we should be drinking. And if those waters are actually the sun's energy actually penetrates the water, it literally changes the chemistry of the water. There are some fantastic studies from the University of Washington here in the United States currently that are showing that the water has different properties when the sun's light actually embeds itself energetically into the water. Who would have thunk it, right? This is the healthy stuff that we need to think about. So when we're turning on the tap in our house, it's not really healthy water. And when we filter it out, it has everything removed. It's as dead as it can be. So we need to have these minerals from natural springs, ideally. So we need to have that because it is. There was a paper that was just published a couple weeks ago talking about natural spring water has now been shown to help the microbiome in the gut. I'm going to write a paper. I'm going to write a blog about that because I've done some research recently. But that healthy water with trace minerals and even the energy of the sun is very important. Maybe not easily measurable, but it's very important. So what else can irritate the gut? This is amazing. Stress. Emotional stress is probably more damaging to the gut microbiome and the epithelial barrier than any other one element. Maybe that's not a true statement, but it certainly comes close to that. You can be extremely healthy with diet and everything else is in place in your life, but you have emotional stress that is chronic. How do I know that? I have two slides. One slide, my partner in periodontics years ago, he was a big photographer of the mouth. He just took lots of pictures of his patients before and after treatment. He had a patient who came in that this woman was living in Charleston. She was not married. She had no real tie to Charleston, but she was living here. She was employed at a business where she had been abused by her employer, physically and sexually, to the point where she came to the office. She didn't relate the two yet, but she came to the office with ugly, raw, angry gum tissue, looked like severe, actually leukemia. So the medical doctors checked her out and there was no leukemia or other systemic problems that they could determine. Dentally, she didn't have dental disease from dental plaque. She just had this very aggressive, ugly inflammation and bulbous type tissue, just vesicle after vesicle. My partner finally talked to her and she confided in him in this abusive relationship she had with her employer. He got her to quit the job and she actually got another job in another state. She disappeared for 4 months and then came back. She had no medical treatment and no dental treatment at all. The only treatment was the 100% exclusion of her emotional trauma. Her gum tissue, and I have the before and after photos, the gum tissue looks like a perfectly normal, healthy gingival gum tissue area. Amazing. And that's because the emotional stress affects, obviously, the cortisol levels, and it affects the gut microbiome, damages the epithelial barrier. Very severe chronic acute systemic inflammation occurred. And the most weakened area of her body genetically was probably her gum tissues, and it responded in that way. Another person may have gotten rashes all over their body, or maybe severe headaches, or all kinds of different organically derived manifestations of disease. This is how it manifested in her mouth. So emotional stress is huge, huge.
That's really amazing. And if we have the capacity to get a copy of those slides.
Oh, I can get you the before and after slides and you can send them to your people. Yeah.
I'd love to put them in show notes because, listen, documentation beats conversation all day long. And one of the things I know that both Al and myself are very committed to is to try to document case by case what this world shows us in his own case, in my case, and all the clients that we get the opportunity to work with. And, you know, the only just to clarify, this woman had what looked like red inflamed gums that anybody would look in the mirror and go, oh my God, what is as red as these little flowers on the screen behind me?
Oh, yeah.
And then she takes herself out of this abusive emotional relationship, moves to a different city, state, comes back 4 months, has no treatment, and all of it is cleared up. Because that's how important the emotional component is and how it affects the gut and how the gut then affects the mouth. And it's one unit of immune system going, I'm trying to survive. Back to Al's previous statement, I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to deal with this inflammation and trying to show you how stressed I am in here dealing with all of this stress from external influences. It's beautiful.
The pictures tell 1,000 words. And when you'll see the before and after, it'll blow your mind. So that's a factor. Another factor is all kinds of different oxidative stresses that are created by over exercising. How many people do you know that get involved with extremely aggressive exercise on a daily basis and then develop a severe muscle wasting disease called rhabdomyolysis? You're not even giving the tissues the time to repair. So eventually they're saying, I give up, and they start to break down. So over exercising is probably as bad as sitting on the couch just eating potato chips. So you got to be sensible as to what your body requires and doesn't require. I'll give you another example about oxidative stress, and this is dentally related. Everybody wants white teeth, right? I don't know why, because teeth are not, chick-lick white teeth, but some people think that white is healthy and it's attractive. So no one has really white teeth except the people that constantly bleach them.
Yeah.
No human has white teeth unless they bleach them constantly. So if you want some white teeth and you get a in-office bleaching system, that's not so bad, but the color changes and goes back to a slightly different shade of less white within days. So some people want that white look 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they not only get the bleaching in the office, which is not a big problem at all, but they get trays that they use at night, which has very high concentrations of hydrogen peroxide to continue to bleach it day in and day out. They wear it sometimes during the day, they wear it when they go to bed. A study actually was done, a double-blind study actually was done with people that use bleaching trays every day for, I don't remember if it was 3 or 4 weeks, but something like that. And it showed that their gut microbiome changed and their reactive oxygen species, their oxidative stress was significantly higher, and it was actually related to the amount of oxidative stress that was created after a heart attack. Now, this is in the paper itself, and it's explaining why. So what happens is most likely, it's not absolutely sure, but most likely is a high concentration of hydrogen peroxide, which is not normal for the body, gets absorbed under the gum tissue into the circulatory system through the capillaries, possibly through the lymph, and dumps into the circulatory system, or your saliva gets some of this excess hydrogen peroxide and you swallow it and it goes directly into your gut, and it's damaging the gut microbiome and it's creating oxidative stress because the body does not like this very high concentration of peroxide. So those chemicals can be a problem and damaging your gut microbiome. Another thing is improper sleep habits. We have a circadian rhythm. It is directed by the pineal gland with the melatonin. It is directed actually by melatonin that is created in certain bacteria in the gut. Not quite exactly a circadian rhythm, but it does produce melatonin. Other organ systems are activated and deactivated based on a circadian rhythm. And if we get that all screwed up, it affects our overall metabolism. So sleeping, people that think that they only need 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night, that's not part of the human experience.
So, and I know you have a hard stop in like 5 minutes. So I want to get to the last one. And speaking of sleep, okay, people are tracking their sleep through Aura Ring.
Yeah. This is a great
I know
segue.
one of the next damaging things to the gut has got to be radiation. You're going to tell me.
Yeah, so absolutely. We live
Bluetooth earbuds in his ears that I already gave him a hard time about, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Okay, so I'm using these because the headsets I was using were so painful, but by keeping them on for hours and hours, because I do a lot of consultations every day.
Yeah.
I got somebody recommended this, and they are fantastic. But when you're 74 years old, you're not going to be harmed so much by the dirty electromagnetic fields. But these emit dirty electromagnetic fields. But I have a solution for that. But dirty electromagnetic fields that are in this computer that you and I are looking at, or our cell phone, which is a huge element. I will just quickly relate two different studies supported by NIH of all places, National Institutes of Health, were done on rats and mice. That's okay. They actually used an old cell phone. I think it was an older series. It wasn't the newer series, but an older series. So it didn't even generate that much dirty electromagnetic field as the new cell phones do today. But they used that for a year in these rat and mice cages. They had a double-blind study. So some of the mice and rats had the cell phone, but it was turned off, completely inactivated. Others had it turned on, so it was generating this dirty electromagnetic field for a period of 8 hours a day, I think. So whatever that particular method was, at the end of a year, those rats and mice that had the phones turned on for 8 hours a day, all of that year's time, developed significantly more cancer, lymphomas, and the other control group did not. Does that translate to humans? I don't know, but I think it does. How many humans have to be killed by maybe these things over time before somebody says, oh, I see the relationship? That's why, and this is a diversion right now, that's why I do what I do with my unconventional cancer protocols that may not have been proven, but I don't have 20 years to wait for proof and then say, oh, so the carnivore diet is really good for cancer. I have my own means to determine that.
And that's how you get there, by the way. Yeah. That's how you get to 20 years out. You have people like you that are willing to pioneer research. And
you have to have a lot of N=1 before you get N=2 or 10 or 20, and then control groups. But humans will never be part of control groups because it's not ethical, and you can't get an institutional review board to
except for maybe the experimental vaccine that everybody needs to be signing up for.
Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
They are testing it on humans, so with beyond that caveats that
I would,
so we can't. But I just brought it up.
Really love to talk about that, but we don't have time.
So
we're getting this dirty electromagnetic field radiation when we go into an airplane 30,000 feet above the land. We were really bombarded with this. There's so many sources that are affecting our gut microbiome and our cellular membranes and all kinds of areas in our body. Now, here's the interesting thing. There is technology probably based on earthing or grounding, because the Earth's magnetic field is critical for our health. NASA really understood that eventually when they put astronauts into space, and then they developed osteoporosis because there was no electromagnetic fields in outer space that were generated like the Earth's. And now they use electromagnetic field generators in their space capsules and spacesuits to prevent osteoporosis. Well, there are methods to develop pulsed electromagnetic field therapy that actually can offset the damage of dirty electromagnetic fields in the body. You just have to lay on a certain type of mat twice a day, maybe, that actually generates these healthy frequencies that literally counteract and negate the damage, cellular damage, that is being created by dirty electromagnetic fields. That's part of my unconventional cancer protocols, as a matter of fact. I use pulse electromagnetic field therapy mat twice, mostly 3 times a day, certain protocol that I have that not only helps to reduce any bad effects from dirty electromagnetic fields that I may experience from my environment, but also to heal my cellular membrane, my mitochondria and its ATP production, and my bone destruction. And it's been very beneficial for my bone pain, which I live with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because of the cancer I have. But dirty electromagnetic fields that no one really thinks about are damaging our gut microbiome. So all of these elements, certain types of prescription drugs, certain types of over-the-counter drugs, are very damaging to the gut microbiome. So there are so many elements in our environment that we are exposed to every day, and not just bad food, that can damage our gut. If we understood the ones we can control, granted, there are a lot of things you can't control, but certainly whatever elements you can remove that are irritating from your environment, that's affecting your body, and of course, put the nutrients into the body that it's requiring, the bottom line is you will develop a robust immune system. And I have a method of testing to see if you have a robust immune system that's a little bit different than most people recognize. I even wrote a paper, 5 important tools for a robust immune system. It has to do with glycemic variability. It has to do with vitamin D levels. It has to do with the diversity of microbiome in the gut. It has to do with healthy gum tissue. All of these little things, and ketone production, all of these little things that may in itself be good, if you look at them and connect all the dots, lead toward a robust immune system. I think it doesn't want to say in.
Yeah, because
I need to put glue in here.
Because I called it out. So
I need to put glue in it.
I think that's, I know you have a hard stop, and I appreciate all that information. And I really want everybody to know that not all PMF technology is created equal.
Oh my God, no. And that's the problem.
Some of it has dirty electricity itself, as do saunas. And I would just like to bring everybody's attention that you do not lay on a PMF mat with your cell phone in hands trying to I've seen it so many times, Al.
And then the other thing, and the other gadgets that you think are health oriented, like certain watches that constantly emit dirty electromagnetic fields, throwing out theoretically healthy data to your computer app. Not true. Rings that have all these generating dirty electromagnetic fields that are generating theoretically health data for your app. That's, partially true, but it's also damaging. So you got to be aware that there are so many technological gadgets out there that are based on dirty electromagnetic fields to work properly, unfortunately.
And have consciousness about it. I mean, we bought an amazing massage chair for our office, and the first thing that did was we disconnected the Bluetooth that was right at their head while they're going inversion and massaging their muscles. I don't want Bluetooth at your head. So it's like these modern conveniences, these modern conveniences. And at 74 years old, like he said, he's been gifted these last 2 to 3 years of his life anyway. He's trying to make his life easier. He's making an educated decision about what he wants to use. I'm certainly not putting him in my 8-year-old kid whose brain
absolutely
is
not,
and going to use them
absolutely
for the next
not.
45 years. Like
absolutely
that's
not.
what we got to be conscious about. And I really appreciate all this. I know that you have to go. I know people.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but this has been always fun. I have lots and lots of information on my website that is easily downloadable. It's all for free. It's not a big deal. I do some coaching if anybody really wanted to get one-on-one, and I do a good bit about the mouth and the gut and all kinds of stuff and cancer. But DrDanenberg.com is my website, DrDanenberg.com. I will send you those photographs of the before and after, and you can post those. I think that'll be great. And if you have any other PDFs, I can send you a whole bunch of links to PDFs that I've written about all this kind of stuff that is easily and quickly available to any of your listeners.
Thank you so much. And from our heart to yours, build that robust immune system.
Oh, I am. I'm good. I'm doing so well. It's amazing.
And thank you for teaching everybody out there in the world about how to do this, and with all your efforts in the dental world and getting them to understand nutrition. You're an amazing man. I'm so blessed to have gotten to know you in this last year.
Oh, you are so sweet. Listen, you know, I'm a very ordinary guy doing maybe some extraordinary things, but I'm a very ordinary guy putting a lot of the medical dots together that nobody really wants to seem to put together and making sense of it. I mean, it's out, the knowledge is out there. All we have to do is search for it, or maybe find somebody that has searched for it and read the stuff that they present. And that's where I come in.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a
You have a great day.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.